the one and only. And I don't know if you know this, but she's actually in the passenger seat, so she's not driving. It's okay, of a car. So I don't know if that means she's so epic that she can like drive and Twitter chat and host an epic Twitter chat at the same time. But regardless, it was epic. It was awesome. And it was about one of my favorite topics, which is learner-centered instruction and learner-centered education. So Katie, great job tonight, and welcome to the Mastery Chat recap.
Thank you. Super awesome chat. What a great group. It was really fun to be part of it, and really made my drive go a lot faster. So thank you to all of you for keeping me engaged.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really neat to be part of it, and you guys are quite an awesome team that really connect a lot of educators. So thank you for all you do.
Hey, without those awesome educators, we're not much of a team. So it kind of goes both ways, right? So like I said before, this chat's topic was learner-centered instruction, right? So tell me, I love learner-centered instruction. I talk about it all the time with mastery, self-paced learning, personalized and student-centered learning. So like, give me like a quick version. If an educator or a teacher's never heard of learner-centered instruction, give me like the movie trailer about what that is.
Yeah, no problem. It seems to be the challenge of the week for me. I think basically how I describe learner-centered education is really looking to our learners. Who are the kids in our classrooms? Who are the people we're serving? And what are their needs? And we put that first rather than the system, rather than the tests. Content and standards are important, but if we don't know who the kids are and what their needs are and really help them solve their own challenges and things they're motivated by, then we miss a lot of opportunities to engage students and to leverage all of their talents.
Absolutely. That's a great definition. It's something
so I can go back to it.
Yeah, this will be posted live on Facebook. You can keep that, save it. We can make a transcript and just share it with the world. Okay.
Awesome.
It'll be the first few lines of your next book. Okay. It'll be awesome. So it's amazing. Adam Welcome was actually in the chat tonight. He was partaking, and he actually recently keynoted at Teach Better conference. And one of the things that he said at our conference that just resonated with me is that when teachers often complain, or when teachers say like, I don't want to engage in using this new tech or teach kids to code because I'm not comfortable. One of the coolest things he said that I really love was that, like, how to approach those teachers and saying, well, it's not about you. It's about the students, right? And part of the thing I loved about your questions is it really focused on that evolution in teachers' mindset, right? So this evolution of like, this is what I do as a teacher to this is what I do for the students in my classroom. And I think that's a really great transition. One of my favorite questions was, when you had teachers reflect on the evolution they've had over the last however long they've been teaching, from more teacher-centered to hopefully more student-centered, why do you think it's important to reflect on that evolution for a teacher?
Well, I think it also was I love the responses, but I think it's so important that when we teach, we go to school, obviously, we go through our own education, we go our teaching credential or whatever license, and then we're kind of expected in this like magical place to know it all. And it's really a false way of looking at teaching, that like you have all the experience and expertise once you finally start teaching. And instead, if we can understand our roles continuously evolve as we have new kids, we have new resources, new tools, and frankly, the world evolves too. And if we are really teaching our kids and meeting their needs, we have to continually change, not just do what we've always done, but really think about what our kids need. And that's why it's important.
Yeah, I love that answer. You're just killing it on the chat and on this recap. I love it. So yeah,
I just wanted to comment.
Sure.
I was just going to say on your comment about Adam's response, I totally love that. And I think it is about kids. But the other thing, when you're really shifting mindset and helping people understand, a lot of people aren't really excited about integrating new tools. They're not like, I got into teaching because I can't wait to use Google Classroom, right? It's really about how can I how can I meet the needs of my kids? And I have found when people are resistant, if I focus on their kids and their goals,
Yeah.
we start finding the right tools instead of like, hey, use this cool new thing that rarely motivates a lot of teachers.
You are so right on the mark here. You know, I work with a lot of teachers and implement huge shifts to like mastery and self-paced learning, right? And when I just come in and go, hey, you should do this because it works, right? It's never really effective. But when I
Right.
go, okay, so if I'm a student in your class and I didn't understand yesterday, am I going to understand today? They go, well, no, you're going to be completely lost. And I go, okay. And if I'm a student that understood it 2 days ago and I'm allowed to move and am not allowed to move forward, so I'm bored for 2 days, is that fair? And all of a sudden they're like, well, no. And all of a sudden, like once you've given them that perspective of the learner, of the student, and given them
Yeah.
that perspective, the whole conversation can change. So like I absolutely love that. And I think you are spot on. So what do you think, listening to the chat, listening to the responses, if a teacher was like, you know what, I've been standing and lecturing for 40 to 60 minutes every single day, notes to bell, test on Friday, but you know, Katie Martin inspired me tonight. This chat inspired me. I want to be more teacher centered. I'm going to say, based on my experience as a coach and a consultant and a trainer with teachers all over the place, I'm going to kind of say that it's really hard to make that whole shift like overnight, right? So, what do you think are
Yeah.
some small steps a teacher can start to make that can move them towards more learner centered instruction?
Good question. And I think we all are continually moving in that direction and have not
Always trying to
arrived
be better. Yeah.
ever. Yeah. But one of the first things I always say is just stop and ask your kids what's working, right? Take
Yeah.
5-10 minutes, start a class. Like we make a lot of assumptions about what students need and what they think. And if we just stop and say like, hey, kids in my class, like, what's working for you? What are things that you're good at? What are some things you're interested in learning about? Like those things can give us a lot of insight. But if you ask the questions, you actually have to use some of the answers and respond to them. You can't just ask them and then
Right.
put them away.
Sure. That's it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, so that's like number one first step. Talk to the kids, find out what they're thinking. And I think the second thing that we talked a little bit about on the chat is like stop over scaffolding and doing everything for students. This also applies to professional development and what we do for teachers. Like give a question, allow time for people to struggle. Don't just jump in with the answer and keep moving on. But, you know, less is more, and more in depth questions and letting people struggle really can create much better outcomes and much more motivation in learning.
Yeah, I love your focus on productive struggle there. I also love the idea that, I used to have a saying in my own classroom that like I would never try to say something that a student can say themselves, right? Because
Yeah.
the minute you do that, you've stopped them thinking, you've stopped them learning, and you've stopped the entire conversation because you've spoon fed the answer, right?
Right.
So things like asking questions with questions instead of answering questions with answers all the time, funneling questions, like having students like create that inner voice. Something that you hit on that I think every teacher needs to kind of get a big notepad out and write down was that if you don't use students' responses and you don't validate those responses by actually changing your actions based on those responses, you
Yeah.
devalue what those responses were, and you're less likely then to continue to get that authentic response, right? So I love the fact that you really focus on like hear your students, but then react and create action based on that response, right? Because if they don't feel heard, they're not going to keep talking.
Totally. Yeah, if you really want to know, you have to be able to listen and be willing to hear things that are hard. I just met with a group of teachers a couple days ago, and we had a senior come in and visit classrooms with us, and then she shared her thoughts, and a lot of teachers were really surprised that she said it was really easy to zone out in the classroom. She was like a top achieving student, and she just said it's really easy to zone out because you tell me all the answers and there's always one right way to do things, and it's not very exciting or motivating, and like that took a lot of teachers by surprise. But I think if we actually listen to the kids' reality, we will learn a lot.
Yeah. So one of the things that I noticed you did in your title for this chat, and I'm a huge proponent of the way we talk as teachers and educators is the way that we practice education, right? So I noticed that you use the word learner instead of student, which puts the action in the place of the student, right? So like that's a very student centric word, saying you are a learner, you're an active participant in this process, as opposed to you're a student, a passive vessel that absorbs information. That's something I like kind of wanted to give you kudos for, because I loved that. And I think that like viewing students as active and necessary parts of the learning process and the instructional process, I think is a great first step. And I think changing our language is a good first step. Would you kind of agree? Am I off base on that? Because
No,
I use.
no, you're not off base at all. And I think that that matters a lot. There's another reason I use learner as well, is because I often include educators as learners too. And so if we don't see
Mind blown.
ourselves as learner in that process and we're only telling students what to do, we're thinking about how students should behave differently rather than seeing us in the whole ecosystem of school and education as learners, then we're really missing out. And I think, as people pointed out in the chat, if we're not modeling our own struggle and learning and vulnerability, how are we expecting students day in and day out to learn something new, do hard things, if we're not willing to do that ourselves?
Wow, you just went from deep to like epic meta on me right now. And that was awesome. I don't know if I can go anywhere from that. That was just fantastic. So Katie, what would be one final thought? I'm going to let you kind of close this out before I sign us off here and let you get back to your car ride, which you are safely in the passenger seat. I just want to remind anyone that's just getting here that Katie Martin is not being a dangerous driver right now. But if she was, it would kind of be worth the epicness of some of her awesome comments. So I'm almost okay with it at this point. So what is one final thought or one parting message you'd like the Facebook world and everyone who participated in this Twitter chat to kind of know or hear?
I kind of want to respond to a question that was taken differently than I intended on the chat. One of the questions was, how do we make our learning more visible and more public? And when I wrote that, I was thinking more of like us as educators to make learning in general more public and the process of learning more visible to everybody. And a lot of people noted that like sometimes kids are like the most vulnerable kids. You don't want to just like out their learning. And so I would say definitely we want to make it a safe space. But my comment and my final like thinking here is, as educators, if we can really make our learning more public, be more vulnerable, be more open about what we're learning and why we're learning and how we're evolving as educators, I think that is the way that we are going to truly create more better experiences for kids, and we're going to learn together. And I really think that's the only way forward, is if we do this collectively as a community.
Absolutely. That was fantastic. So, Katie, thank you so much for an amazing chat and dropping even more knowledge on us here in this recap. I truly appreciate it. And the Teach Better team and the PLN and the Mastery Chat world truly appreciates it. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope everyone else has a fantastic night. And Katie, thanks again. Have a fantastic night, guys.
Thank you for having me. It was awesome. It's a great group, and I'm honored to be part of it.